Now, here's something that you're not going to see in the white media. As I and others have been saying, and as we knew all along, Justine Damond was trouble from the very beginning. Turns out that there's a reason that they heard a loud noise. Officer Noor heard a loud noise because Justine Damond slapped the squad car that they were in. This Damond woman, who the white media has been trying to cover for her 5 ways from Sunday with all sorts of pathetic cover stories saying that she's a yoga instructor, that sounds and smells like a clumsy front for prostitution to me. Probably selling weed and her dirty drawers out of her own home. In either case, it doesn't really matter because now that the facts are beginning to come out, as we kept telling white people, you need to wait for all the facts to come out, they're coming out all right. And as we thought, Officer Noor was indeed well within his rights to assume that something was wrong because who the hell slaps a police car? Now, if Justine Damond had been black, she'd have been riddled with bullets. If anything, Officer Noor showed extraordinary restraint, especially when you consider, as Sean Hannity never got tired of reminding us until this shooting, it was Minneapolis, where you had Black Lives Matters protesters in the streets chanting, "What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Right now." See, Sean Hannity seems to have forgotten about all that. But this is what we find out. Justine Damond slapped the police car, according to the warrant. And the white media is not saying much about it. That's because they got their narrative, and damn it, they're going to shove it down the public's throat no matter what. They're just going to ignore anything to the contrary. Now, some simple Simons among you, some idiots, some of the interlopers from the status quo, a few trailer apes will probably amble in here grunting that, well, it's still sad. Only thing sad here is that an honest cop just doing his job is being dragged through the mud while this almost certainly drug-addicted prostitute who damn near attacked him and his partner is being treated like some sort of saint. That's the only thing sad here. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And the white media is not going to give any of the white officers who killed black people this kind of anal exam. They've never tried to overturn heaven and earth, lifting up every stone to try to find out what kind of service records you have. What did you do before you got here? They never made it a point to discredit or otherwise try to denounce a white officer who kills a black person. They never try to point out that this person never should have been in the police department. They don't make it a crusade. You don't know the first damn thing about Justine Damond other than she's white and that she's allegedly Australian. You don't know anything about her background, don't know anything about her so-called fiancé, about her parents. We don't know anything. And the white media is not asking. You know when the white media knows that something's up because they all of a sudden lose interest. They know full well that if we start asking questions about Justine Damond, we're going to be finding all sorts of things. Do you think it's an accident that Officer Noor's legal counsel has wanted a toxicology report? Find out what kind of drugs this woman was on? And notice how the white media doesn't seem to be waiting with bated breath to find out what the results of that would be. No toxicology report. They're not looking to report on that. They're looking to cover it up. No one's asking anything about Justine Damond's behavior in Australia. If she's supposed to be Australian, and there are question marks about that, what the world was she doing there? Did she obey the law? We don't know anything about her. This is how the white media pursues the race war against black people. A white person who is shot by a black officer because she hits the doggone squad car. What the world was she thinking? And no one's asking, does this woman have some sort of antipathy toward the police? You call the cops twice, then you go outside. Obviously, she doesn't trust the police. And we're not supposed to look at her and say, something's wrong here. So the story that the white media and the white public have been trying to forward about Officer Noor, because they're so desperate to get the heat off of themselves for the untold number of black people that they murder. Now they think they got themselves an honorary person of color, a black officer who they can lynch in the media. They're going to go ahead and make a cause celeb out of him. Just tell lie after lie. It's their favorite tactic. But the story is falling apart. And look at how quickly it is falling apart. Nobody's bothered to ask Justine Damond's fiance. Hey, does she do drugs? Any sort of wild sex parties we should know about, any trouble with the law. They're not asking anything about her background, not asking about his either, and they're not going to. The white media, the propaganda arm of white supremacy, knows full well what their job is in this case. It is to smear the black officer and to help to push the narrative that the black person is always wrong, always bad under all circumstances. They're furious because those 2 black officers in Marksville, Louisiana, they got charged immediately. That didn't happen here. And what they really want is for him to be charged so we can go ahead and get this kangaroo court underway. That's what this is about. This is about the color-coded injustice system. This is about punishment for black people and no punishment for whites. That's what it's about. There is a pecking order. There is a script that the injustice system operates by, and right now that script's not being followed. That's why there's so much butthurt and so much anger about Officer Noor. If he was charged, then they'd be cool with it. They'd be like, okay, 80% of getting this guy in prison is just charging him. Oh, he hasn't been charged yet. Well, there's something wrong with that. He should have been charged. What about the investigation? Screw the investigation. That nigger's supposed to be in handcuffs. No, he's not. Because white police officers never get put in handcuffs, and there was no complaining about that. We have to wait for the investigation to be completed, and the more we find out, the more we find that, nope, Officer Noor was indeed well-trained. He did indeed show the proper level of professionalism and restraint that white officers never show. Officer Noor is a sterling example of exactly what the police are supposed to be. He was protecting that neighborhood from what I think we can all start to understand is most likely a meth-headed whore who called herself striking his police car. This weirdo, this whacked-out zombie, this piss-blonde, yellow-haired drug addict, and most likely freelance prostitute, who struck the side of a police cruiser and said God knows what to the officers. Notice how Noor's partner has yet to say that, well, there was no reason to shoot her. No, hasn't said anything like that at all, hasn't broken ranks. The more we find out, I think we're going to find that there's, of course, all sorts of garbage on Justine Damond, all sorts of justification for this shoot. This was a good shoot. It was a good shoot. If Justine Damond had obeyed the law, like not hit a police officer's car, if would that not slap a police officer's cruiser, if she had obeyed the law, if she had kept her head and acted like a civilized human being, this wouldn't have happened. But the problem is when you're part of a group, an ethnic group who is immune from law, you never get punished, the police are always showing you all sorts of deference and special dispensations. Well, small things like obeying the rules, those are not even suggestions to you, they're a joke. Well, Justine Damond died laughing. And I said it. I ain't shedding any tears for her because the more we find out about her, the dirtier and dirtier she looks. And the white media's attempts to try to force a quickie arrest of a good officer, an innocent man who was doing his job protecting the community from a dangerous thug, from a rampant lawbreaker, this man ought to be celebrated. This man ought to be interviewed on the nightly news. He ought to be giving demonstrations at police headquarters to officers about how you deal with people like this. That's what he should be. The guy's a freaking hero. He was protecting that community, and look at how the hell look at the thanks he gets. Lawless. When you got a lawless neighborhood full of reprobates, that's what you get. What you get is people who think nothing of, man, there's somebody being raped outside of my home right now. Yeah, that lets you know what they're used to in that neighborhood. They're used to rapes in open, broad daylight. The rapists in that neighborhood don't even have the common courtesy to snatch their victims out of sight to rape them. They just do it right out there where any passerby can see. I guess that's just how those people are. And this is where Officer Noor was patrolling and trying to keep this jungle full of trailer apes, trying to keep it safe and keep it under control. Officer Noor was trying to find a way to keep the jungle where the trailer apes hang out at resembling something akin to civilization. But of course, you can't clean up a mess that likes being dirty, so of course, Justine Damond all of a sudden gets sainthood. Justine Damond, possible drug addict, almost certainly a prostitute. We're going to go ahead and overlook all that because, well, she's the right color and he's the wrong color. It ain't about public safety. You're not going to see the police saying, back the badge, at the very least, give this man a fair hearing. It's like, hell no. This nigger called himself killing a white woman. He's supposed to go to prison no matter what. It wouldn't matter if she was out there with an AK-47. The fact that he's the wrong color to be killing a white person, that's all that matters. Because after all, you wouldn't want black officers getting the idea that they can use force against white criminals. We're not trying to spread that idea. We're trying to spread the idea that black officers are supposed to restrain themselves, and you better hope that there's a white officer nearby because you can't touch a white person. To hell with that. You crack their freaking heads when they're breaking the law. You crack enough of their empty heads. What'll happen is some of them will decide to think twice before they break the law. So local hero, Officer Mohammed Noor, is slowly but surely being revealed to have been within his rights, and the local one-woman crime wave, Justine Damond, possible drug addict, possible prostitute, is being shown to be the criminal that we knew her to be. And the white media and the white public's pathetic attempt to make a saint out of Satan is falling apart, predictably, as we knew it would. And as more information comes to light, the story is going to get even worse and worse. Haven't you noticed in recent days that the white media is trying to do exclusively just hit piece after hit piece on Officer Noor? They're not really, at this point, asking anything about the investigation itself because they know how this works. All they're talking about is, the grieving family. The family is grieving. Oh, the family is grieving. They're not asking about the case anymore because they know full well when you got a situation where there's somebody who you can put up the lie that they're just an immaculate victim because they're white. And then as soon as the evidence comes out, they're scared that people like myself are going to publicize it. And they should be scared. I'm seriously considering no longer calling what I do real black media and instead just calling it the real media, period. This is something you should be seeing on CNN, but you're not, of course. The same CNN that ran interference for the murder of Trayvon Martin and called themselves denouncing and attacking anyone who demanded that George Zimmerman be held to account. The same CNN who couldn't wait to slander Freddie Gray via his mother. You couldn't get any dirt on him, so you decided to throw dirt on his mother, but you're not asking any questions about Justine Damond's parents. You're not asking whether or not they got a criminal record. And ain't there supposed to be a stepson in there somewhere? No, we ain't asking about them. Ain't asking about Justine Damond's fiance. What's his criminal background? What's his jacket look like? Nah, instead we're going to talk about Officer Noor, but even then, there's slim pickings when it comes to trashing Officer Noor. Only thing you can say about him is he wasn't on the job long. Neither was Timothy Loman when he murdered Tamir Rice, but we can overlook that. Never mind the fact that Timothy Loman had to be fired from the Independence Police Department for emotional instability. We're not worrying about that. He's white, so that's all that matters. You need to understand that about the white media. You are dealing with card-carrying, dyed-in-the-wool, anti-black zealots. These are genocidal lunatics. They know exactly what the result of this kind of color-coded coverage is. They know exactly what the result is. They are contributing and creating a daily drumbeat of black people killed by the police are criminals. White people killed by black cops are innocent and pure as the wind-driven snow, and black cops should all be run off the force. If even one black officer enforces the law against a white criminal, then they should all be fired. They know exactly what the end result is. This is Nazi tactics. This is Gestapo tactics that they're trying to push. And they will only be successful to the extent that we are either vocal or silent about it. So you make sure you let everybody know. Justine Damond, who I think we are all honest enough now to admit is almost certainly a drug addict and prostitute, struck the side of Officer Noor's police cruiser with their hand, which is obviously a prelude to violence against the officers themselves, and brought about her own death. That's what really happened. deal with it.